Good morning, everybody. Well, we are at a new Parsha, and this one has a very special place in my heart. This is Parsha LECH LECHA, friends, and there are a number of reasons it is special to me. It was my bar mitzvah Parsha. It was my son's bar mitzvah Parsha. It was my sister's bar mitzvah Parsha. It was our father's bar mitzvah Parsha. And next year we will be celebrating another member of my family having their bar mitzvah on this special Shabbat. And so this is a story that really lives in my heart. So what is Lech Lecha about? Lech Lecha begins the Jewish journey. And that's important to say exactly in that way because the two parshiot that we've read since we re-began the Torah, Breshit and Noach, they're powerful, they are important, they are climactic, they are the creation story, they are the uncreating and then the recreating in the Parsha of Noach. Humanity is born in Parshat Breshit. All of those are deep concerns of the Torah, and so it's important for us to start with a recognition that the Torah is not only concerned with the destiny of the Jewish people, the Torah is concerned with the fate of the world and the fate of humanity. That's why it starts with one person. And the covenant does not begin then, nor does it truly begin with Noach, though there are obligations that the descendants of Noach share, basic ethical obligations that aren't particular to the Jewish people. But in this week's Parsha, it all begins with Avram, not Avraham. His name will change as his journey continues, but his name is Avram. And one of the most important things for us to hear at the very beginning of this week's Parsha, which of course I know by heart because we've been through it as a family so many times, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. Vayomer Adonai el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. God said to Avram, go, a double language which we'll talk about later this week, go. Go from your home, from your land, from your father's house. It's a departure in radical ways. Leave behind everything you know. And the question that we have to ask ourselves, one of the many, is who is Avram? Who's this guy? He's the beginning of everything we call our tribal home, right? The beginning of the first Jewish family that leads to the Jewish people. But who is he? And we really don't know. We do know that he had already been a wanderer because we hear a little bit of his lineage at the end of last week's Parsha, but we don't know anything about who he is, the quality of life. And we aren't privileged to have the chance to say, Avram, who are you? Who were you? Why were you the one God called? And so over the millennia, we have wondered. The rabbis of antiquity created a midrash, a whole corpus of stories to fill in the gaps within the Torah, and sometimes to push it in a direction it wasn't going to go. I love midrash. We continue to write midrash as we explore the meanings of Torah. But what was it about Avram? So I want to share one specific midrash, and it is something that I take seriously personally, and I invite you to think about as I share it. Who was Avram before the call? Before God's call, Avram was like a bottle of perfume with a cork still on. Let that in for a second. I'll share the end of the midrash in a second. Who was Avram before God's call? Avram was like a bottle of perfume with a cork still on. When God called, the cork came off. There's something really essential about this. The journey that, Natalie, I see what you're writing. The journey that is not gentle, because Avram left everything behind. I know it was for God's call, but I just yesterday saw with my wife the closing show, The Kite Runner. The Kite Runner, which is based on the book. There's also a movie made of it. This was a show on Broadway about Afghanistan through the years, and a fictionalized journey based on fact. And one of the things that I consider as I sit watching this play, letting it in, masterfully done, is what it is to leave everything behind. The image of a family that has succeeded in so many ways, having just a suitcase to show for it, smuggling themselves in an oil barrel on a truck to make it anywhere. And I was very aware that this week was Lech Lecha. So yes, Avram is called to a beautiful journey, but that beautiful journey begins by leaving everything behind. Now, the Midrash continues. Before the call, Avram was a bottle of perfume with a cork still on. When God called, the cork popped off, and the beauty that was Avram started wafting into the world. One of the questions I think that we're supposed to ask ourselves when we learn Torah is, who am I? Only part of the journey of learning Torah is, what does the text say? But we don't read Torah in an objective way. We don't read it only as literature. We read it as a mirror. We read it so that the questions that we ask of the text and the characters of the text, including God, ask of each other, are also questions we ask ourselves. So when I say to you, who is Avram? And then we share the midrash of a bottle of perfume with a cork still on, part of the journey as a spiritual seeker is then to say, oh, if that's who Avram was, what about me? What about my perfume? Am I still corked? Do I feel called? What's my purpose in the world? Avram walked and walked and walked, following a God who had not chosen anyone in particular other than Noah to be purposeful in this way. Now, we have to imagine that other sacred texts have other sacred calls. We have multiple ways up that mountain to the divine. But this was Avram's call. This was his calling. Who was Avram? What do we know about him? To quote another musical that my wife and I were really blessed to say, it's been a very big week where we got to return to shows. It was spectacular. And both times they were gifts from friends to see these shows. We learned so much. We saw A Strange Loop, which is also closing on Broadway, but we saw it last week. And one of the quotes in it comes to mind when we do this kind of very personal journeying. In A Strange Loop, one of the lines is, a mirror mirroring a mirror. It's a very, very complicated musical, well worth seeing. It really cooks your noodle, at least it cooked mine. But one of the ideas is that by standing on stage and doing this kind of art, the actor, which means the cast, which means the story, which means the playwright, which means the divine spirit, is asking questions within the play that are actually mirroring potential questions that the audience, meaning the world, has. So it's a mirror mirroring a mirror, because ultimately we in the audience are participants in this art. Let me relate that back to Avram. God said to Avram, Lech Lecha. God said to Avram, go. But we know in our journey, because we've been here before, that God is with us on this journey. So even though the command from God was to Avram, you go, we can also read within it a certain way of understanding that God's journey took a new direction then too. Let's go. Bring me with you. Ask your questions. Help others ask theirs too. Who was Avram? We'll find out. Maybe Avram said the very same thing to himself. Who am I? I guess I'll find out. May we be blessed to make good choices as we journey forward. May the perfume that is uniquely you waft gently and beautifully in the world, friends. There is so much ahead. Let's also dream, believe, feel that the divine walks with us as we make our way forward. Lech Lecha. Okay, here we go. Bless you, friends. See you tomorrow. Take care.